Re:Zero, Volume 5, Chapter 4, Part 4, On the Periphery of Madness. Rem stroked her hair back, moist from the foggy morning air, and gently raised her head. Perhaps it was accurate to call her half awake. Rem felt a little woozy, hovering somewhere between sleep and waking as her internal clock told her it was time to finally rise to her feet. There had been no changes of note during the night. No demon beast or highwayman had appeared. She hadn't even sensed any. All that said, Rem seemed to have been fairly worn out as well. Certain of her comparative safety, her body had strived to recover while she was half awake. She rose to her feet, stretching up high as she felt the cool morning breeze. It was a lazy, unladylike gesture. She would never do such a thing where others could see, but she had no concern about that at the moment. The only one around was Subaru, sleeping soundly beside it. Subaru! Rem jumped in surprise when she noticed Subaru was right beside her, curled up under a blanket. Since he'd been leaning on Rem for support, the young man gently flopped onto the grass, scowling as he turned his body a little. He came out of the carriage while I was sleeping and cuddled up next to me. Rem hastily looked between the boy and the dragon carriage behind him. Even putting the truth into words sent her into quite a panic. On the one hand, she was shocked that she hadn't noticed him moving. On the other, she blushed hard as she realized just how tolerant her heart had become where Subaru was concerned. In other words, even if Subaru had assaulted her in her sleep, she would never have resisted. I have been too careless. Even as she made that maidenly lament, Rem thought deep down that Subaru's action might be a good omen. The next step after he behaved himself so well during the dragon carriage ride. Subaru made no response except laughing or crying, and even in that state, he performed a voluntary action, getting out of the dragon carriage under his own power. Rem held out hope that his broken heart was beginning to mend and his personality beginning to reform. All right, let's go back, Subaru. If a change had been initiated, things would probably head in a good direction thereafter. Such optimistic thoughts were not like her, but this, too, was no doubt the influence of the young man before her eyes. And that internal shift was something Rem considered very dear to her. She believed that the thoughts rising into her head the night before had been a bad dream caused by her timid mind and tired body. She had completely forgotten it, a cheerful future having overwritten it as if it had never existed. She lifted up the sleeping Subaru, resting him upon the driver's seat as she roused the land dragon. She brought water for the awakened beast to drink, rewarding him for his long hours standing watch, and prepared for their departure. With one hand embracing Subaru over her knees and the other holding the reins, they departed once again. The carriage wheels turned, and the scenery moved. They were about halfway there. It would probably take another 7 to 8 hours of travel. Her mental and physical endurance was far stronger than on the day of their departure, with its tragic circumstances. Subaru was deeply asleep, and Rem gazed at the side of his face, conveying her impatient feelings throughout the reins as to pick up the pace. A faint vibration ran through the dragon carriage. Rem adjusted her embrace of the curled-up Subaru, intertwining her own fingers with his. It looks so slender, but this is indeed a boy's hand. Resigning herself to her weakness and fleeing to that land, she hoped her meek desire to touch him could be forgiven. It was a little ritual for forgetting about a bad dream. This warmth, having you so close. If I have that, it is enough. After all, hoping for more was simply her own selfishness. Her feelings from sensing that warmth and the fact he needed her had been carved into Rem's heart. She would give him her utmost efforts. She would give him everything she had. There was something amiss in the air. As the dragon carriage raced onward, Sumeru seemed to be sleeping poorly, so Rem had rested him atop her knees, using her supporting arm to stroke his black hair when she finally realized it. Maybe it was the fact she'd had a lot of time to think things over the night before. Rem, having accepted to a certain extent the complicated feelings within her, was jubilant on the inside when she saw that Sumeru had gotten out of the dragon carriage in the dead of night to snuggle up against her. If that was the reason she'd failed to notice the change sooner, she was a great fool indeed. It is too quiet. In all that time on the Liffus Highway, Rem had not come across another land dragon even once. This was an offshoot from the main highway, but seeing none at all, even on the distant horizon, was clearly unnatural. Normally, traveling merchants en route to the royal capital and peasants returning with new farm implements were here and there all over the highway. And yet, the road had been deserted since the day before. She had not taken any special measures to avoid farms, but she hadn't seen a single person, man or child. What was particularly wrong was that the cries of birds and insects had vanished from her ears a short while earlier. A bad feeling rushed into the back of Rem's mind. Such silence meant that the creatures of the wild were in hiding. It was a sure omen of something beyond the ken of man. As they cut through the hills and entered the mountain road, drawing close to the mansion, that malaise had only increased. With unease, Rem snapped the reins to spur the land dragon, already running at a desperate speed, to hurry even faster. She knew she was pushing it too far, but she had no time to spare to locate the cause of that unease. She didn't mind if it turned out to be a baseless fear. She apologized to both Subaru and the land dragon for accompanying her on the reckless journey. She'd faced them just as she had faced her own anxieties the night before. And just after she had that thought, "Sister?" Suddenly, thoughts that were not her own threw her mind into chaos. Nearly unbearable levels of anxiety, anger, and fury flooded her. And then it all immediately vanished, leaving Rem on her own. It had been Ram. Those feelings had flowed into her from her sister through their shared link. Ram was always a model of self-control on the outside, but in truth, she was built of stern stuff on the inside too. Normally, the only things that could shake her were related to Rem or their master. And yet, Ram had been possessed by such fury that she communicated it to even Rem via their shared connection. Furthermore, the fact that it cut out immediately meant that she was controlling herself so that Rem would not pick it up. Rem guessed that her sister assumed she was in the royal capital, not able to make it in time as her older sister fell into peril. But Rem was close enough to do something, even if it was not Ram's wish. That was why. "I must hurry back!" With a concrete reason to make haste, she gripped the reins so hard that her hand went white. In an instant, Rem's sense of urgency and impatience cast all her misgivings around her surroundings to the winds. On the surface, Rem was normally emotionless, always striving to maintain her inner calm. When lives were on the line, she lost sight of everything around her. It was Rem's defining flaw, one that Ram had pointed out to her many times, and one a former colleague had pointed out to her as well. And now that flaw was rearing its ugly head once again. When the land dragon's head sailed before her eyes, Rem saw it in slow motion.